The minor league baseball season is over, which means it's time for the affiliate recaps. And as always, everything starts in Bradenton for your Pittsburgh Pirates, bringing back the voice of the Bradenton Marauders at Zins21, Thomas Zinzarella, off of his first season calling games down in Bradenton. Thomas, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. It's still kind of getting used to the feeling that baseball season's over for me, and I don't get to do it every day anymore. So kind of already inching a little bit to get back to spring training. Caught up at some sleep, and back in New England now. So the weather's a little bit different than Florida. So it's all different so far. Getting used to end of the baseball season. It's always something that I get over.
Oh man, you're definitely adjusting. If you're going from the Florida weather to the New England weather, I mean, it felt like Florida and Pittsburgh yesterday. I had the TV set up outside for everybody for the Steeler game, and it was like almost too hot to sit outside. So definitely a little bit weird, and it has to feel weird. I mean, it's a Monday for you, so you wouldn't
Yeah.
be calling a game today anyway. But then you wake up on a Tuesday and you're like, what? I don't have to call a game today, but with the Marauders this year, before we hopped on here, talked about how, the season didn't really go how many had hoped it would go. I looked at the age of our players, a very, young Marauders team, especially on the hitting side. Was looking at the records, got off to an extremely slow start at the beginning of the season. The first month, I believe it was like 5-17. And when we were talking about the start of the second half of the season, which we'll get to, just really never could get the traction going. But before we get into all of that, I did want to ask you, with your first year, behind the mic for the Marauders, is there any, little moment or memory or game or anything that like really sticks out to you, and something that, you'll probably, carry with you, throughout the rest of your broadcasting career?
Yeah, I'd say, some of my favorite moments. I mean, there were some that really stuck out this year that I've ever been behind. I mean, it's my fourth year in baseball, and every year there's always something, a couple things that stick out. And we kind of start. Two of them happened in May, really. Obviously, had the infamous turtle delay on the field, so that clip going viral. And again, it's something that I had never had before. I had a goose on the loose last year that was picked up and went viral as well. This one was a little bit different because it's a turtle and it's not a goose, and so that was in the same homestand as the Marauders. End up they went they hosted Fort Myers and then St. Lucie and the Mets, and so the Turtle Lay was in the second week against the Mets, but Bradenton ended up going 11-1 during that homestand, in which they ended up having a franchise record 10th straight win. They had, I think, three walk-offs in the second week against St. Lucie, and including the Sunday as Marilyn Valdez hit a line drive to right center, and that was the franchise record 10th straight victory. They ended up going to Tampa, winning on Tuesday to make it 11, and then they lost on the Wednesday. So that was really a fun part to be a part of that. And Fort Myers week was crazy too, even because we won the Tuesday game, nearly got no hit on Wednesday. Rivas had like a 2-out single in the eighth inning. And then so we lose 2-0. That was the only loss of the homestand, the 12 gamer. And then we come back the next day, and basically we almost no hit them. They got a single in the ninth inning. So it was kind of a crazy 24 hours where you go from nearly being no hit yourself to almost doing it to the opposition. So that was a lot of fun. And then kind of the one other big moment I'd say that really stuck out was Slim Polanco hitting a walk-off grand slam against Lakeland that single-handedly kept them from winning the first half. Now, granted, they got to the championship. They didn't win it. Palm Beach won it as they won the second half. But yeah, that was a little funny in the moment because Lakeland had a game, I think, rained out or postponed in Fort Myers coming into that week. And so it was the end of the first half, start of the second half. So we're playing the Tuesday game, and the wind was just gusting. I mean, it was like one of the 2-3 times this year where the wind was just like 20 miles an hour blowing in from right field. So like nothing was getting out. I think Valdez hit a ball that like I thought was going out, it didn't. And there are a couple of guys like that were like warning track flyouts. And sure enough, we gave up, I think, 3 runs in the top of the 10th inning. I'm like, man, it was tough way to lose. Like Lakeland's just going to keep on winning. They have a half a game lead. I'm like, they're trying to, they got 2 games left after this one on the Tuesday. And sure enough, Shalin Polanco comes up and hits a line drive missile that just sneaks over the wall in the bullpen. And so it's a walk-off grand slam. But, I mean, there's some other big moments too. I mean, Will Taylor's first pro hit was a grand slam. I mean, Justin Mickness hit his first professional home run. So there are a lot of guys, and that's what's cool about this level is that a lot of guys either get drafted or, they didn't play after the draft the year before or, non-drafted free agents. And you get to be on the call for, their first ever professional hits and home runs, RBIs, and all that. So there's definitely, I mean, there's so many more moments to talk about, but I know we're always short in time. So
Yeah, I don't think too many broadcasters could say that they were a part of a turtle delay. So, I mean, that's definitely one for the ages, and people, I mean, don't understand sometimes the effect of the wind both for and against you. Down there in Bradenton, I know that it gets put on the broadcast when the Pirates are in spring training, and yeah, I mean, the swirling wind at times, and it's just definitely, a crazy experience. But overall, with the Marauders, they end up finishing the season overall 54-77. It was last in the West Division. Scrolling across the bottom of the screen here, a 655 OPS. It's 8th out of 10. They did have 111 home runs, which is first. They also struck out the most. The ERA, 4.18 sixth, and the 1.396 whip is eighth. Yeah, the power was definitely a storyline for the Marauders this season, and let's just get into the hitters. Like let's talk about a couple of the hitters that like really stuck out to you this season.
Yeah, we'll say we're talking about the wind and all that, and even just to start off with the pitching ERA. I know we'll start off with the hitters, but I mean, really, that ERA was ballooned too by their last home game. They gave up 17 runs against Tampa. I mean, it was and it kind of leads in the hitting now because Lecom Park, I think, going in like the last 2 weeks of the season, I think it will probably still hold true. Lecom Park saw the most home runs of any ballpark in the Florida State League. So that's a credit to the power that the Marauders are able to generate, and then you kind of get a few home runs here or there. But I mean, there are guys, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you talked a lot of the coaching staff and all that. I mean, if you get to double digits in home runs in this league, it's pretty good. And, Marauders had a handful of guys that got there. As Maryland Valdez tied the franchise record for most home runs in the year. And he's a guy that I think has improved a lot throughout the season. He's a power guy, plays first base, right field, DH. And, his walk numbers went up throughout the year. And so that's always you like to see. Strikes out still, percentage is still a little bit high, but I think he's 20 years old, and I think he's a guy that maybe jumping onto more radars this season if he starts the year in Greensboro. I mean, you saw Rivas. I always told people, I'm like, if Rivas could, he had one of the best months of the year. I think he had like 380 in June, and that was coming off in April where he hit like a $115. So, I mean, you look at his season numbers, and it's, it could be a little bit higher if it wasn't for most of the offense in April kind of struggled. I think the team hit like 170 in the month. So that's why a lot of the offensive season numbers are a little bit suppressed too, because after that, I mean, they're over the Mendoza line. It was a really tough start in April to put bat to the ball. But, I'd say Valdez was one of the guys that really stood out. I mean, talked about Rivas. He always has had the glove and the arm. I think he's had one of the best. I would tell people, I mean, he's got one of the best arms in the league. It's just, can he hit it consistently? We kind of started to see that, and then he got promoted to Greensboro, and that's part of the reason why he started to be more of a consistent hitter. Other hitters, Shalin Polanco still brought the power, and I will say, it wasn't the year that probably Shalin wanted to have, and others maybe were expecting, but he started to really end the season well. He started to walk a lot in the last month of the year. And August, you look at his August numbers they're probably the best numbers he had of the year. And obviously the power is still there. He's got one of the better arms. Him and Valdez probably the two best arms defensively as well. It's weird trying to think of like other guys. I mean, Omar Alfonso got promoted to high A, and I think he's one of the consistent guys too that I really, really like to have. And kept hearing from guys, if he there's one little thing to his swing, and you're going to start to see him elevate and collect home runs in bunches. And you kind of saw that at times this year where, he didn't hit the quantity that Valdez did, but it was really consistent when he did. It'd be like 2, 3 in a week, and then nothing for 2, 3 weeks, and hit 2 or 3 more. And so, uh, yeah, I was really excited to see him and him get the promotion. And then, one guy too that kind of burst on the scene was Axiel Plaza this year, and he was a top 30 guy in the past, but he's got some of the best pure power that I've seen. At one point he was on pace for a lot of home runs, and he still finished with I think 15, somewhere around there, and he was at least in double digits. And he's a guy that came up in middle of May because of some injuries to the catching position. Didn't light the world on fire last year in the complex league, and to start this year, and then he comes on and homers in 2 of his first 3 games, and hit one of the longest home runs in the FSL this year at George M. Steinbrenner Field. I think it was like 450 feet. Granted, the wind was blowing out, so went over the scoreboard, but still, I'm like, he's got some just power, and I think you saw him a little bit more at the end of the year. Didn't hit a home run the last like month or so, but he started to become more of an overall hitter. Wasn't just searching for the home run ball, and he's only just turned 19, so it was a very young offense. Most of the guys that were on the offense were international guys. Whereas like the pitching side, it was mostly all college guys, and he mixed in a few international signing guys. So, obviously the offense was a lot of power. And, one guy they really missed too was Jesus Castillo. Went down with injury early in the season. And so that was kind of a leadoff guy that they had that they lost.
Yeah, and you talk about like these young guys, and especially with Rivas, I remember him being like this tall, skinny, lanky kid, and now he's like growing into his frame. He's getting, more muscle on the bottom half. So you get into a season and it's like, okay, well, I have this new body because I'm a young kid and I'm getting bigger, I'm getting stronger. And it could, change the swing a little bit to begin with, and you kind of have to adjust to that. Mentioned Plaz, I mean, just turning 19 years old. Valdez 20. You had, Johnny Severino coming up. He's 19. Your Donnie De Los Santos only 19. So you have like a lot of these young kids that are, kind of coming into their own, but also first time playing like a full slate of games. It's not like, the FCL or the DSL or even college. I mean, in college, they're not, they're not being asked. It's like to play that many games in a row and for that long a period of time. And I do think that the minor league schedule is good in some ways because you get that one day off every week, but then you have to go at it strong, for the next 6 days. And for these players, I mean, that is, I feel like a pretty big adjustment for the younger players. And you talk about that mix of, college, international, guys coming up, coming up because of injury. And it's just definitely, it's a very interesting thing. And that's why I said, it all starts in Bradenton. But on the pitching side, I mean, you mentioned, some of the college arms. I always bring up Carlson Reed because I'm a West Virginia baseball fan, and he had, an excellent season. Michael Kennedy, you got Xander Meath at the end of the season. But talk to me a little bit about, and everybody else out there, talk to us a little bit about the pitching staff, maybe some guys that, stuck out to you.
Yeah, definitely. It's just funny too. I totally forgot about a guy like Severino. I mean, we talk about the best moments of the year. I mean, he had the first ever cycle in franchise history. Granted, it's only really 13 years worth of baseball. Didn't have the COVID season, so only go back to 2010. But he was another guy that really stood out too offensively this year, and really exciting if he starts here in Bradenton. Where his numbers will go. But on the pitching side, yeah, Carlson Reed. I mean, you got to start with him. He was the opening day starter. And, we talked about too, I talked a little bit with him and when I interviewed him a couple times and the fact that you're right, for an adjustment for him, especially because he was the closer at West Virginia. Now he did start games, I believe it was sophomore year at West Virginia. So he has some starting experience, but you go from, I think even that year, I don't know what he threw, but I mean, his last year he threw probably about 40 innings or so between college and then, He pitched in the draft league. So you're talking about not a lot of innings, and he eclipsed that probably in May, June, not even half of the season. Like he was eclipsing those inning numbers. And, his stuff is really good. I mean, that's a slider sweeper, probably his best pitch. But I mean, mixes a really good fastball that sits, as a starter, 93 to 95, probably 94, 95. And then you mix in a changeup with him. And yeah, he's worked on a lot too, and just being more in the zone. I think that was his biggest thing was the walk numbers at times, and even still too. I always say, having been in double A, high A, and now in single A, the biggest thing for some of these pitchers that, really good pitchers are when their stuff isn't on that day, how effective can they be? And, Carlson had a couple of, his sort of quote unquote, like rough starts, which would still be 4 innings, 2 runs, maybe walked 4 and struck out 3 or 4. So the walks would usually go up in those starts, just didn't have the command, but still a very effective pitcher. And, you happy to see him get the call up. And Michael Kennedy too, was on the injured list for about a month or two in the middle of the season, and then comes back and 5 starts, really good, and then got even better as he got to Greensboro. So in a pitcher's ballpark there too, or a hitter's ballpark there too. So Bradenton can be at times more of a hitter's ballpark. So, and it was definitely good to see him. And Kennedy's really a guy too that worked a lot in the zone this year. He's a guy that threw a lot more strikes. His walk rate, I think, was below 4%, which is one of the best in minor league baseball, top 20, top 30 among qualified pitchers. So that was the biggest asset for him, is that he was always in the zone. And then, Antoine Kelly was another guy that really impressed me this year. I think he still has a little bit of ways to go, but he's a guy from Aruba. Not a huge baseball state, or baseball country. Curacao is right there, and then there are a lot of big leaguers now. But Antoine Kelly mixes in a really good fastball cutter, and I mean, he sits 95, 96. And another guy that's kind of really under the radar right now, I feel like. I think he develops some of the, he's got his other pitch arsenals, but just improves on those pitches. I think he's a guy that's another breakout candidate. And I think, again, he's 20 years old. So it was a very young Bradenton team. And then some of the older guys were out of the bullpen. Mag Jokota really impressed me. It was funny because I was talking with, some of our staff this year about it, and him specifically, because he was the late inning guy, closer at times for when Lynn Tompkins was down with an injury. And Koto's numbers ERA wise were better when he was walking more guys. He had a left on base percentage of like 85%. I kept saying, it's like, I feel like every time he comes in, lead off walk or something, and then ends up being a bloop single or something, infield single. And so you've got this high pressure situation, and he always comes in and delivers. Then after that, he just shuts him down. And it was funny because I looked at it. I'm like, yeah, his walk numbers were the total 180. So credit to him. He knew he needed to throw more strikes. He did. Really impressed in the second half. And then obviously got the promotion up to Greensboro. But it was funny because his ERA went up. And then, like, that's obviously what happens at times. You're more in the zone. Guys might, put a couple more in play for hits. But kind of like Kennedy a little bit at times. But he was one of the bullpen guys that I really liked too. He's got good stuff. Fastball, changeup, slider. And he's a lefty too. So that obviously helps. And then kind of other bullpen guys, Hunter Furtado improved throughout the rest of the season. But one of the draft guys that I really liked out of the gate was Connor Whitgriff. I think he's a guy that threw a lot of strikes. His sliders his money pitch, and he got a lot of swings and misses. I think if depends what he does in spring training, but I mean, he's a 7th-round pick out of Minnesota. And, for baseball fans, maybe Bradenton fans, George Clausen started the season for the Phillies and the Clearwater Threshers against the Marauders. He was his teammate in Minnesota, and Clausen, obviously zoomed up through the system, and he got traded then from the Phillies to the Angels at the deadline. So he was one of the most rising stock guys in baseball. And again, he was another mid-round, kind of later round guy. I think it was like a 6th-round pick or 8th-round. And so, not saying Whitgriff is that guy because they're different pitchers. Clausen throws like 98. Whitgriff sits kind of 92 with his fastball. But I mean, he's a guy that, again, is kind of a little bit like Michael Kennedy, where he's a pitcher and can carve guys up with his stuff. And kind of excited to see what he does going into next year. But again, there's probably just so many guys that just always leave off. Just kind of who comes to mind when I think of. Obviously, again, it was a really a really good pitching staff. They had one of the best ERAs in baseball in the month of May. So they went from April, where they gave up a lot of home runs, to May, where they're one of the best. Christian Curtis too. He tweaked something in his delivery and started to throw a lot more strikes. And he's a guy too that's got 5 pitches or so that he's really good when he's on. And you kind of saw that where his numbers improved because of I think he just finished just over 4 ERA in the season. But he's a guy that I think that really impressed me this year too. And then Xander Meath, you talked about him the end of the year with us, and Xander, talk about the adjustment too. I mean, he's a high school guy too. So you go from that to the complex league where he's pitching, I think, every Wednesday or so. So and you're traveling on that same day, and you're only traveling, he pitched a lot in Sarasota against the Orioles. So it's a 20-minute ride. And now, you're having to play 6 days a week, show up at the ballpark and do stuff. It was a little bit different. And I know for him, I mean, he probably looked his best in his last couple of starts, kind of dipping his feet here. And I think you see that a lot with a lot of those younger guys. They dip their feet wet at the end of the last season, and then they come back even better. You look at Kennedy was like that, where, okay, here's what I need to work on. Here's what I need to do. And I kind of expect the same for Xander, because his a 3-pitch mix. Fastball's really good. So I'm kind of excited to see for him where he comes back next year.
Yeah, and the one thing that stuck out to me when you were talking there is the thing that development isn't linear, and the stat board doesn't tell the entire story, because you're looking, and the development staff is looking for checking those boxes. I know that the Pirates fans hate that, because that's like one of Ben Cherington's like calling cards, but it's the truth. It's like you're looking for certain things. You're looking for guys to work out of jams. You're looking for guys to pound the strike zone. You're looking for guys to be more selective at the plate, and, to be able to hit certain pitches. But before we jumped on here, we talked about like kind of the second half of the season, where it looked like the Marauders were going to get themselves going. And you bring up injuries. You're talking about, guys that are out for, different parts of the season. But talk to me a little bit about what happened, to the Marauders, and kind of like stunted their second half.
Yeah, I know it was really tough, because I said we ended the first half at home with 3-3. It was a 6-game series, but against Lakeland, you have the Polanco home run to basically end that first half. And then they come out buzzing. They take 2 out of 3 from Lakeland, who's the same team basically from the first half. So that was a really positive start. And then you take on Clearwater the next 6 games, which they had lost a lot. I mean, that Threshers team, it seems like every year Clearwater has one of the best teams in minor league baseball. And they did. They had Aiden Miller, who I think got up to Double-A now. George Clausen was anchoring the rotation. I mean, they just had 1 through 9 through their order was, I mean, one of the better ones I've seen in baseball. Is just like, I mean, they're a number 7, 8 guy, ended up being their leadoff guy after all those guys are promoted. So it was Jordan Vyers. So it was kind of crazy to see how deep their lineup was. Good pitching staff. So they come out, a little bit different look Threshers team. They win the first 3 games. So now, okay, they're 5-1, and that's right around where a couple guys went down with injuries on the pitching side, and so then they lose in the next 3 games, and then they're shorthanded on pitching. And that was right around the same time when Mike Burrows and Aaron Shortridge were on rehab. I mean, they were with us for about a month. Not only for them to just continue to pitch better. Obviously, Burrows pitched great in Indy yesterday to end the season. But, Marauders kind of needed some guys to give them some innings, because their bullpen was banged up with a couple of guys. But they lost 3 starters to injury within about a week and a half in the middle of June. Was Kennedy, Antoine Kelly, and Christian Curtis. And I think Kelly and Curtis throwing some of their best ball of the year. I mean, they were going 5-6 innings, consecutive starts. And, that was kind of a tough way. And then, they put Shortridge and Burrows in there. But again, it just felt like, the Marauders, there are a couple games that they could have won in those stretches, especially against Clearwater, because, again, Clearwater ended up being, I think, the worst team in the second half. And so, and that's what too. The scheduling is always tough. We play Lakeland the most, and they're the best team in the league, or second best team in the league. So we play them, I think, 24 times. We play Clearwater, I think, 21 times, of which 15 of the 21 were in the first half. And so right there, I mean, you're playing, and you see the Mets, 2 series, and then we took we're 11-1 against them this year. So you kind of get to play them. They haven't been really good the last 2 years, but yeah, sometimes it's just the scheduling of the way things go, and that was kind of one thing that the head to head against them wasn't great. And you saw Dunedin, I think we saw them 18 times as well. But yeah, sometimes it's the scheduling works against you. Play the best team the most, and then you play one of the best teams in the half. I mean, they one of the best, I think, minor league records as well. So, but kind of again after that kind of stretch, they kind of played a lot of 500 ball for a while, and then I will say too, it was weird this year. The Marauders, they struggled on the road in the first half, so it was kind of a tale of two halves. So the first half they played really well at home because again they went 11-1 during that 2 week stretch, and then the second half it was kind of the opposite. They played better on the road and kind of more 500 at home. So um, kind of happens like that sometimes. But yeah, it was weird. At one point, they had one of the worst winning percentage in minor league baseball on the road, and then they started to kind of figure it out. So it was kind of nice to end of the year. They picked up a couple wins in Daytona. But yeah, it was a weird home and road, just total 180 at times.
Yeah, and like we said before we started here, cannot believe that the minor league season is over already. It feels like it just started yesterday, which basically means that we're going to be back on here in a couple months previewing the season for the Marauders in 2025, and that time will fly by as well. Um, Thomas, thanks so much for jumping back on here to recap the season. For those of you that don't, please go follow Thomas. It's at Zins21 on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it nowadays. Thomas, thanks, man. I really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me as always, and we'll talk soon. Right, your spring training is right around the corner.
It absolutely is.
A pitcher of beer, a pitcher of beer. Let's order another pitcher of beer. That pitcher of beer should come over here. I love that pitcher of beer.
I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough beers to do a beer review after, kind of like stockpiling all the ones from vacation. But the wife took a girls' weekend trip up to New York, just north of Erie, came back with a beer, and then the beers just kind of kept on rolling in. It is from 5 and 20 Brewing. It is their Shape Shifter IPA coming in at 4.5%. A nice, just easy drinking IPA. It's one you could have pretty much all day long. Give that one a 450, knock it down to 400. Stopped on the way home one Friday a couple weeks ago, picked up the 5150 Hazy IPA from the Smiling Moose Brewing Company. That one comes in at 6.6%. Give that one a 425. Knock it down to 375. And then took a trip out to Hershey, Pennsylvania, Hershey Park, with the family. After a nice long day at the park, we ordered some pizza to the pool area, got a couple beers, local beers from out there. The first one is New Trail Brewing, and it is their State Light American Lager. It's like the whiteout beer, pretty much for Penn State out there. That one comes in at 4.2%. Give that one a 400, knock it up to 425. And my wife loves Mexican lagers. They're not my favorite, but I do like them, but they're like one of her favorite beers. From Evergreen Brewing, the Salute Mexican style lager coming in at 5%. I'll give that one a 375, knock it up to 400. I think it's a pretty good Mexican style lager for people that really like them. She seemed to enjoy it. And then the Juice Juicy IPA, their flagship New England style IPA. That one's a 6%. It was a little bit on the hoppy side for me. I do like some hops sometimes. Maybe it was because I was drinking like a light lager and a Mexican lager, and then I had that one. It just seemed to be a little bit overpowering. I'm going to give that one a 400, knock it down to 350. And then a couple days ago, stopped in at a local pub around here, and they had what is now possibly one of my favorite beers that I've had in a long time from Dancing Gnome, the McKee's Rocks Hazy IPA, 5.4%. And this is like the crazy thing. It is a fresh berry pie and summer citrus hazy IPA. This was like one of the smoothest like drinking beers I've had and one of the most delicious tasting beers I've had in a long time. 5.4%. I'm going to give this one a 500. It does get knocked down to 450. Absolutely delicious. Do not have the top 5 Pirates prospects this week. I'm going to start to do the recaps here. Bradenton, Greensboro, Altoona, and Indianapolis, and then come back with a top 5 Pirates prospects for the entire 2024 season, kind of working on looking at some videos, compiling some stats on that. So that's going to be towards the end of the season. Also, the Arizona Fall League rosters should be coming out at some point in time here. The Scottsdale Scorpions will be who the Pirates prospects will be playing for this year. So I guess until next time, let's go Scottsdale Scorpions and maybe nobody else until that point in time. Not really sure, everybody. We'll see. Hopefully those come out and I can start to talk about that during one of the next episodes here.